What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to be talking about what's going on with these Perceptors. We'll talk about the figures a little bit and how they look and all that, but I'm less interested in that than I am with a lot of like the business stuff and stuff like that. So what kind of interests me about this is the order of events in terms of release, kind of where it started, where it's going, and what it means. Because I think it's unique, but we'll find out for sure. I think this marks a moment in history between X-Transbots and Fans Toys, and I think that we have to come down to some sort of realization that these two companies might be headed straight into a war with one another this year in general, and perhaps next year and all of the years to come. I've always got the impression that X-Transbots has been perfectly content being second place in this race in terms of kind of general third-party masterpiece kind of foothold or footprint, but there's stuff about this chain of events that makes me think that perhaps they're not okay. But in order for them not to be okay, they gotta really step up. But we'll talk about why this seems interesting in terms of like just the chain of events. But before we do so, we need to talk a little bit about some housekeeping. Not only housekeeping, but a little bit of a promo. I got a couple woven blankets left. One of Devastator, one of the Optimus Prime collage. They're $165 shipped in the US as of right now. Hit me up if you're interested. First come, first serve. You can email me at bobbyskullface@gmail.com. Secondly, let's move into a little bit of housekeeping. For one, the cassettes. There was a couple things about that. One, people were saying you could fold up the guns and put them in to fill out the hollowness of the calves. The problem is then you lose the iconic look of the character even having the gun or having the gun stick up straight from the back. It's like cutting off the nose despite the face. It is something I missed for sure, but it doesn't solve my criticism regarding it. I'm hoping to have put a video out on Friday about the MMC tapes versus these tapes and why I didn't do the comparison. I hope you guys have seen that. To me, it seemed like a silly comparison to do. Hopefully I've made that point. Not that it's not a valid criticism to take a look at, but that it's just not, it shouldn't be the go-to comparison. It's apples and oranges. And whether you like apples or you like oranges doesn't make one right and one wrong. It's a preference thing. Secondly, the Ultra Magnus, there is an ankle rocker. It's more of a foot rocker cheap, but it works perfectly fine. I just didn't catch it. I'm always reluctant to kind of push and pull on things that don't look like they naturally turn when they don't belong to me. This was no exception, and I missed it. So just scratch that criticism from the list. I look at a lot of toys every week. I'm going to miss stuff. And I'm going to break some stuff. Hopefully not anytime soon, though. And with that, I think we can get started with today's discussion. So we have the Fans Toys Tesla 2.0 versus, I forget the name of the X-Transbots one, but it's the Fans Toys new Perceptor versus the X-Transbots new Perceptor. And they both have a lot of similar things going for them. However, they haven't always. So in order to get to why this might be, let's tell the story. So I think this story starts with Tesla 1.0. And I always thought this was a solid offering. And I know a lot of people didn't, and it was kind of a controversial release at the time. History ended up kind of clarifying that controversy, and then this guy ended up going for tons on the aftermarket, mainly because there was no other offering and no competition for this character. But to this day, he sits on my shelf and holds the spot fine. So much, in fact, that I'm not particularly excited about either of the upcoming releases. Doesn't mean I won't be picking one up. Doesn't mean I'll be looking at both, just in terms of my own excitement. But it was a controversial figure for Fans Toys at the time. There was all the beef about the color issues and everything else. And comparing it now, in hindsight, to a lot of the kind of current offerings, it does seem a little bit antiquated, both to the time and perhaps more antiquated by today's standard. So shortly after that, there began rumblings of a possible update. I think it's clear that Fans Toys has some sort of pride regarding this stuff. And I mean that both in a good and bad way. But I don't think that they like any sort of tarnish on their reputation. And I suppose no one does, but I think it bothers them specifically. Bothers them to a point where they often feel as though they need to correct it. Sea spray would be an example, right? Cesium would be an example. And alas, we started hearing rumors about a possible Tesla 2.0, which to me, once again, doesn't seem like the most necessary thing in the world. However, it seemed on brand. And then lo and behold, February 10th, 2020, we get the official announcement of a Tesla 2.0 right before the entire world shut down. It wasn't too long after this, I believe at a convention, where the prototype images seemed to come along. And I believe they were prototype, which means that it was fairly well along. But we didn't hear an awful lot more for more than a year. From February to basically June 2021. June 18th to be exact, I believe, where we did receive an update. And it looked like he was going to come with 4 heads. There was going to be a tank and a microscope feature. There was going to be an IDW representation. There was some concern about his waist swivel. I think those concerns are still relevant, I believe. But everybody was pretty much on board, excited, etc., etc. It looks like a better representation of the character. And while I even certainly admit that it looks better than 1.0, once again, didn't really do much to excite me. I need something really new to excite me. Or perhaps a dead end. That would do it. But to the rest of the world, or at least the rest of the fans, or the people that didn't have the opportunity to pick up the first Tesla, this was definitely going to be a great option to get in on the Perceptor for their Masterpiece Collection. And then all of a sudden, on August 12th, comes an X-Transbots photo dump of their Perceptor. And I think that this is a bit of a historic thing. And not to say that it's never been done before, I can't be 100% sure. It's a lot to keep track of, this stuff. But Fans Toys has a reputation of showing their reveals shortly after other companies have shown their reveals. And people have criticized Fans Toys as being somewhat of a bully in that regard. And I can argue for or against that. I see both sides of that. But I can't think of too many circumstances, and like I said, I'm sure there are some, especially if you want to start considering some of the figures that never came out, like a Blitzwing or a Trailbreaker, which does seem like it's coming now. But I can't think of too many circumstances, perhaps I should say, where companies have held Fans Toys' feet to the fire and come more than a year after the announcement and said, nope, we're going to do this too. And X-Transbots is also offering the IDW look with the sniper rifle and the whole bit, as well as the targeting bit on his eye. In addition to that, they're also offering the tank mode for the vehicle. But, of course, they are simultaneously offering the G1 mode and the G1 microscope mode to go with it. They also saw Fans Toys 4 head sculpts and raised them an additional 3, along with all of the mini-bot accessories to kind of go with that thing from that episode where they went inside of Megatron, etc., so to speak, and scientist accessories, etc. So once again, kind of throwing everything they had at the wall to stick. And people were pretty excited. And people started talking about, not all, but some, getting the X-Transbots instead. So as a buddy of mine, Joel, and I were talking, and he made a great sort of point, it became the Perceptor game of chicken, and Fans Toys jumped off the lane first and came back swinging. And now they're offering 10 different head options, as well as all of the other stuff that they were previously offering. However, I'm still not sure if we're seeing signs of any decent waist swivel. Looks like there's a marginal one in there, but you never know until you know. And it looks to be painted to the standard, in my opinion, that we expect. Not the standard that we got with Acoustic Wave, for example. But, to be fair, the standard we received with this tapes. And all of those things working in concert, to me, suggest that this competition is a little bit different for Fans Toys than we have seen in the past. So I think that this is an interesting competition, and yet not so. So I had a conversation recently where we were talking about the changes in third-party competition. We were using the Inferno Wars as an example, where all the Infernos look different. And I knew lots of people that got multiple iterations of those Infernos because they all had their own sort of individual identity and characteristics. But now a lot of these companies are competing for the exact same space with almost the exact same figure. Are these figures exactly the same? Of course not. Do they look very similar? Yes. If I were to show some normie who doesn't know anything about this stuff a picture of Make Toys Inferno versus MMC's Inferno, I think they would be able to tell they were two different things. If I were to show them the difference between these two, I'm not sure that they could. They're just very similar. We're looking at nuanced differences. But there are differences. My prediction is that the X-Transbots is going to have a higher level of articulation. Ironically, my prediction is also that the X-Transbots is going to be better looking paint-wise. I think the Fans Toys is going to be better proportioned. I think the Fans Toys is going to have better materials, and I'm not talking about die-cast. Some people get confused when I say that. I'm talking about the actual plastic and pins and joints and ratchets and everything. I think the X-Transbots is going to have more accessories, obviously. And I think that where this really is going to come down to a winner, it's going to be between the transformation. Neither one of these companies are especially known for their kind of fluid and intuitive transformations. In fact, both of them are kind of known to have frustrating ones. Doesn't mean that they don't have nice ones that come along the way. They do. But I think that's really what's going to set these two apart here. As for purchasing, I think I'm buying the Fans Toys only because I'm already in for it. And I was in for it with Nick the Toy Guy before I even knew the X-Transbots was coming along. Plus, despite how I feel about a lot of the weird business moves that Fans Toys made, I'm still a defender. I'm still here to support them. I hope that they continue. But I hope X-Transbots does as well. And I'm glad to see that they have a big fanfare behind them. I think that this is going to be a question of first to market, because that's going to count. It seems like this Fans Toys one is really ready to go, but it also seems like this X-Transbots one is really ready to go. Chinese New Year's right around the corner. I think it's going to be a major contributor as to who comes out on top of this war, who comes out first. If you ain't first, you're last. And I think that might be the case here. But this is a very cutthroat kind of competition here, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not like a clear and present winner. It's close. And there's beautiful things about both. It reminds me similarly to the MMC Springer and the Fans Toy Springer, which I think is the next closest kind of competition. So I'm here for it. Real quick, I did say that we were going to have the most anticipated unless something came up, and this came up. Next week, I think, is going to be a Versus, as you all might have suspected, so it won't be there either. It is going to come up. I have other stuff planned. It's just feast or famine. And don't think I didn't see this BotCon stuff slip in. I did. We're definitely going to talk about it. But I can only do one of these a week. So next week is a Versus, and we'll see where we are from there. But I will not skip the most anticipated. That will come, so to speak. It's just a matter of when. With that being said, I hope all of your New Year's are off to a bright start. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.